Welcome,
Hi.
everybody.
Hey,
This is
Welcome, everybody.
Travis Larson Band WWW Extravaganza Technical Nightmare number 2.
Oh,
speaking
no,
of
it's a dream.
Oh, let me get rid of this ticker tape thing so we don't look like a news channel. We're learning week by week.
I can't seem to find it to monitor. Speaking of technical nightmare.
Uh-oh. You can't see anything?
Well, no, I can see you guys, but I'm trying to monitor it on a different, device.
Oh.
Are you guys seeing it streaming?
Something like this.
Yeah.
It just takes a while.
Okay.
Okay, well, here we are. Hi.
Welcome, World Wide Web. We are the Travis Larson Band once again, and it is Saturday night number 2 of our Outside the Inn Q&A session / discussion commentary on all things music, TLB, life, your life. Hope everybody is staying safe, doing well out there, hanging in there with all the claustrophobia of being stuck at home. And we thought, there's just not enough webcasts in the world with enough people trying to figure out what they're doing. So why wouldn't we get into it as well? I was excited. Steve Vai did his, I think it was yesterday or the day before. I think Thursday. And he is also using StreamYard, which is the platform we're using. But I can tell that he is willing and can afford to pay the $25 a month because he doesn't have the duck logo like we do. He has a actual Steve Vai logo. And so the reason we don't have a TLB logo is because you got to pay for the logo or you get the duck. So Dale's got a duck over his head.
Just imagine if it said TLB instead of a duck.
We have all our ducks in a row, and we are ducks in a row. So, and I've learned more about this. I can actually see some comments now. I got a hello from Oscar. So much darkness from Wayne. He was waiting. That was before we came on the air. Greetings, Ryan. Thanks for the kind words, Joel.
I don't know how to get this up and running.
It's on your, it'll be on your mobile device if you can, if you're looking on your iPad.
No, I'm on my, well, whatever.
I'm on my iPad.
I'll sort it out.
You're on
I'm
your
all
iPad.
ears.
If you want to see the comments, you have to put it, I believe, vertical.
I can't even find this session, but I don't have to drag it down with my ignorance.
Anthony says it quacks him up.
It quacks him up. So what does Oscar say? Just hello.
Fritz. Hi, Fritz.
Oh, hey, Fritz. What time is it there, for crying out loud?
What time is it, Fritz?
And Vince. Hi, Vince. In Chicago.
I promise we're not just going to ramble for an hour, but I just kind of letting people get on here and get situated for a few minutes. Where's everybody tonight? Where are you guys located? Not you guys. I know where you're located.
Oh, okay.
We're all located in San Luis Obispo County, California. But
Eric Davis. Hi, Eric.
Hi, Eric.
Love the duck. Everyone, we need a duck now.
Well, we have a duck. We're just going to leave it that way.
Well, I mean, you need a duck prop, maybe.
Road life would be hard on the duck.
I see a couple of people having technical issues other than you, Dale. So our moderators are also having technical issues. So
okay, so I should be seeing it on Travis Larson Band.
I got a
page, right?
Yeah.
Oh, Fritz says it's 4 a.m. there.
Oh,
Fritz,
wow.
Go to bed.
Nice.
Go to
Good
bed.
man. Nah, rock and roll. Awesome. Well done, sir.
And Larry Dickey. Hi, Larry. Aww.
Hey, Larry.
Miss you.
Question
I miss all the Hayward peeps.
Question that's the Keith Richards question of the night would be: did Fritz stay up or did he get up?
Yeah,
Maybe I never went to bed.
Still up.
Duck, duck, goose. There's my sister-in-law saying hi to our roadie Gino. I've got a let's see, where'd they go? I'm losing. Oh, I got to go to this end. Sorry, I'm still
South Carolina.
Yeah, I see it. Savannah, Dallas, San Jose, Orlando.
Nice.
San Diego,
Okay,
San Diego.
Stockton, Fresno.
started working for me. Cool.
Werner's at the Black Bear Diner. Well, home of the
Home of the Blackbird Diner. They're probably not letting you in right
It's
now.
probably not at the Black Bear, right?
Home of broken down TOB vans.
Got
Yes,
Huntsville, Alabama.
nice.
That's down there in Larry Mitchell land.
Larry Land, Electric Larry
Electric Larry land.
That's a shout out to Dudley if he happens to ever,
There's Jeff Burdick in Hemet. Jeff Burdick was a fan of ours who drove all the way to the Bay Area last time I did a solo show there, and he lives in Hemet, which for those that don't know, the West Coast, half the West Coast is California. If you go to the East Coast, it would be the equivalent of driving from Florida to like South Carolina to see me play by myself in a little dive bar for a couple hours. So bless your heart, Jeff.
Sue Larson.
and did
Gino.
he bring Christmas presents?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, this was before Christmas, and he brought us each a handmade Christmas tree that his wife made, which were these beautiful. They were like a
wire,
like a molded metal kind of thing. There's probably a word for it that's more elegant.
Yeah, probably. They were beautiful pieces of art.
So, let me mention a couple things. This we'll definitely get into the music stuff, and there's a few questions that we could get more deeply into from last week. A few things that we didn't get to last week, but Jennifer sent me a link today from I think it was the New York Times. And this was very entertaining to me, and I'm sure it'll be entertaining to most of you who are of my age bracket or our generation. But the Cannonball Run apparently is a real thing. I think I knew this. So the Cannonball Run, apparently founded in 1971.
Oh.
Starts at a garage. I'm not going to remember the exact garage, but it's something ball garage in Manhattan. And so they drive from this garage to, I believe, Long Beach or something like that. Redondo Beach.
Mm-hmm.
Here's how unscripted this is for the listeners. I don't know what the hell Travis is talking about. This is amazing to me. I'm riveted.
You know what Cannonball Run is, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know, you remember
Yeah. I'm just
illegal Burt Reynolds race.
No, I'm all ears. I'm fascinated by this.
So anyway, the article was essentially about these guys. So it's illegal. So the guys break these records, and they put out that they broke these records, and they put their names out there. But I think that once you've broken the record, there's no law against saying you broke a record if they didn't catch you doing it, right? So in order to stay away from anything controversial that's serious, because this whole show is based around good energy and us all having fun and talking music and getting away from all the stuff that we see 24 hours a day on other television channels. Here's the big controversy of the evening. These guys, so there were guys that broke the record back before Christmas. Then this week, some guys immediately broke the record again because there's nobody on the freeways.
Right.
Oh, wow.
So these guys are able to do.
Darn it, we lost you, Travis.
Yeah, you froze for a sec.
These guys were doing over 100 miles an hour average from Manhattan to the coast of California. And they made it in, was it 27 hours?
27 hours, roughly.
Previous record was like 31 or 32 or something like that.
I'm trying to find the data right now, but yes, it was something along those lines.
Wow.
So here's the big controversy. Is that legit, given the current circumstances of what's going on?
It's true. You're exploiting sort of extenuating circumstances.
In the great battling of the Cannonball Run and the probably, I would guess, illegal wagering.
Right.
Is it okay that these guys beat the record by 3 hours?
Well, they're remaining anonymous because they're understanding that it's not necessarily okay, and
right.
But the what I found so fascinating too was the amount of thought that went into this. They have 3 drivers, extra fuel tanks, so they're switching off, and and navigators ahead, like people ahead scouting. So like the movies, you know what I mean? Or
Right,
I guess
right.
that would be more like the bandit movies. But anyways,
Okay, so
not
here's
that
the
I
deal.
know all of these movies.
So here are all the responses that we're looking
I'm trying
at.
to find the records because the record hasn't been approached in such a long time until now.
Yeah, so Anthony Kimball says new song called Cannonball Run.
Yeah.
Now there's an old song called Cannonball Run.
Oh.
And the old song called Cannonball Run has like some really shredding picking in it. All you got to do is rent the movie. Oh, can you do this? You still do that? That's when I saw the movie, you rented it. Like you went and picked it up on a VHS tape.
Okay, wait, here are some quick stats. 1979, a Jaguar XJS, 32 hours, 51 minutes. 1983, a red Ferrari, and I made this joke earlier, like who would drive a red Ferrari across the country at high speed? At 32 hours, 7 minutes. 2006, 31 hours, 4 minutes. And then 2013, 28 hours and 50 minutes. And then now it looks like it was 27 hours. I can't find that.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wait, the crew that just lowered the mark, 26 hours and 38 minutes.
So they destroyed the record.
Yeah, pretty much.
So that, in answer to your question, Travis, I think you hand lists like the Baseball Hall of Fame. You put an asterisk, right?
That's what they're talking about doing. Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
And similar to the Baseball Hall of Fame, you can see the effect of the situation. I mean, it's like guys were hitting so many home runs and then all of a sudden it just exploded. It was 31 hours, and then 26 hours.
Right. Yeah.
So here's the response to what you're saying. There's a few people here, including Boyd, says needs an asterisk.
Yeah.
There you go.
Tony Sawyer says needs an asterisk. Fritz says cheats. Anthony says I say no. Jeff says the stream keeps freezing. You have to check your connection, Jeff, because I'm streaming it here to multiple devices and it seems to be working. So I think that's probably just a locational
bandwidth.
Yeah, bandwidth in either your town or your house or something along those lines. But so everyone here is saying, oh, hell no.
I say Boyd and Werner got to make a run on this, right? Well, no. Right. Shelter in place. But we won't.
Steven says 24 hours. Really? That's awesome. That's a little bit the way I feel. I got to tell you, as much as I feel like, just getting rid of the record. I who cares who has the record? It's a little bit, there's some romanticism to the fact that you can drive across the country really, really fast on empty highways.
Yeah.
I'm not encouraging anybody to do that, but every movie that I've ever loved had something to do with that, right?
Right. Yeah.
I was driving the other night and it was late because I was just getting done teaching and I saw a motorcycle just kind of like look around and just, you could tell it was just an impulsive decision. He just wound it out. He's like, when else am I going to go 100 miles an hour on a city street?
This is long out of print. But again, Jennifer and I managed a video store for many years. Does anybody remember the movie, which is long out of print, does not get reran anywhere, with Lee Majors, and it's called The Last Race. And it's basically but here's the deal for you super.
Oh,
lost you for a second, Trav.
There you go.
For you super nerds, and we're here to bring it back around to music. It's basically the Red Barchetta story.
Oh,
that's a good.
Now you're interested.
That's true. You're right.
How do you know this story, Dale? You've seen the movie?
Sorry, I got crossed up in my storylines. I was saying the sort of apocalyptic nature of the current Cannonball Run is like Red Barchetta.
Okay.
Sorry.
I thought you were familiar with the Lee Majors movie. And I'm like, what?
Sorry, you're right. I got
Here's the deal with the Lee Majors movie.
Thank you. Okay, yeah.
And then we're gonna move on because people are like, come on, guys.
The most boring shit ever.
The Lee Majors movie, he had a car in storage. They outlawed gas vehicles in the whole country.
Oh.
It also had Burgess Meredith in it as like a World War II fighter pilot that still had his plane.
This sounds a little Mad Maxy in a way.
And it's a little bit like that, but not nearly as
Cool.
dark. Oh,
Yeah.
cool is relative, but
Well, I suppose.
The $6 million man driving a Formula One car across the
And
desert.
Bridges Meredith. Yeah,
and
you're
Bridges
right.
Meredith has been hired to take him down, so he's like out there trying to drop bombs on him and stuff.
I bet the screenwriter doesn't remember as many details as you do about this. I see so far Scott Baker says, OMG, I saw that.
Nice.
Hi, Sue Larson. Hi, Heidi Vorvik.
Oh, Ted says, what type of car? Well, if he's talking about the Cannonball Run car, I think, did you say that, Jen? What kind of car it was?
I think this time it was a BMW. I'd have to find it really fast, but I think it was a BMW. Yeah. Sorry, I'll find it. By the time I find it, it'll be the oldest news ever. So, anywho.
Wayne says, did it cost $6 million to make? I guarantee you it probably cost about somewhere between $60,000 and maybe $600,000 to make, but I got to think $600,000 is pushing it. It's maybe like a 1978, 79 movie. There's a kid with him in the movie, and I believe the kid is played by the same kid that's the kid in Meatballs.
Greg Tom's idea in the airplane.
You are so out referencing right now. Yeah. The kid in Meatballs.
Yeah, Greg Tom's is referencing the airplane, F-86 Sabre.
Who was? Greg?
Greg Tom's.
Nice.
Wow.
Well done, sir.
Yep, you got my back, brother. Who would have thought anybody would pull that kind of detail out? You should actually be sitting in here with us. All right. So,
all right. Next.
We had some questions last week. We talked a bit about first of all, Steve, one of our moderators, texted me and said people are asking if we're working on new music. So yes, and last week we were talking about that. Currently writing for the next album, trying to get that, finished by sometime by the time we're allowed to go out of our houses again. Maybe we'll be able to tour on it. So we've got plenty of time. No, bad joke. We'll see. But so we're working on new music, yes. And last week somebody had asked, basically as a band, how we develop. But someone else had asked how the seeds start and how emotion ties into those seeds of a song. And so I thought I would at least start off and talk a little bit about that specifically and technically. So last week, I'll just, as a quick refresher, we talked about, I basically demoed the songs. I'll bring Jen in. Jen and I hack up things and maybe mess with arrangements. And then we pass it on to Dale, and then everybody hones in on their parts and exactly how they're going to present and play their parts. That's the really quick, easy version of how we basically come up with new music. So I come up with a blueprint, and these guys are obviously human beings that make it much better and bring in their personalities versus my MIDI demos that I hand them. So as a very, very early starting point, though, and this is just something that I would suggest to people that are trying to write music that maybe they want to get outside of their box, or maybe they want to compose music that's a little bit less standard or predictable. One thing that I've always talked about doing, I'm back.
Yep.
And you're back.
And you're back. One thing I've talked about when I do clinics is that I will play free form guitar just to a click track, which can be fairly inspiring in a way, because you're not creating a groove or something to play with. But one of the backwards ways that I'll compose is I'll play free form to a click track, come up with progressions that don't necessarily fall into any time signature. So that's one of the ways that you'll come up with things in, you'll have a bar in 7 and a bar in 5 and then something in 4/4. And sometimes it's just me starting out with arpeggios that I'll play, slow arpeggios. Maybe it's just playing some rhythm chords and not worrying about the numbers. things along those lines. And then I'll go back and I'll listen to things that I start to hone in on, and to start to create a platform for me to write melodies to. I'll take a few of those parts and start working on them and creating a section of music out of them that, again, until you start applying, say, the one, a kick drum, then you don't necessarily have time associated with it. The song Winter Still is a really obvious version of that. It's a really, I actually think of it as a pretty simplistic song nowadays, but I think I'm not playing it for a while, so I can't remember if it's 5/8 or 7/8 or both.
I think of it as 5/4.
Or okay.
Yeah.
But there's, I think the progression is long, it's longer and it lands in a weird spot somehow, but like the opening progression, the that part. So
yep.
If you're familiar with the song Winter Still, that was me with a looper writing that song, where I wasn't worried about any kind of time. And basically after the fact, I go in and I start assigning where I would put a kick drum and a snare. Just that basic idea. And then I'll give it to Dale and Jen, and then we start, bringing life.
And then he's like, "What time signature is this?"
And that's
I have
easy
a question.
Yeah.
When you're writing more riffy stuff, I kind of know the answer to this, but I would ask this if I didn't know the answer to this. Do you approach it similarly, or is it more of like arpeggio kind of melodic stuff that you approach with the lack of time? Can you also approach riffy stuff with a lack of time?
Well, you do, as far as the counts, so I'm going to play, again, I'm playing to a click track or a metronome.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so I'll just start playing, and I won't worry about whether I just played a bar,
right,
or, I played like something like, I won't worry about whether I went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8,
right.
1, 2. I'll just play, and then I'll change in a weird spot on purpose sometimes, just where I feel like, that would be kind of cool if I changed there. And that's a way that just from the very early seedlings of something, I'll come up with a foundation to start coming up with melodic ideas for. The big advantage to something like that is the more complex you get in the beginning, which if you listen to our band, it's all about that. It's all about the compositional foundation of the song is the complex part, really. You're forced into writing an interesting melody.
Right, that's true.
Like
and sometimes a more simple sounding melody, but the way it has to weave into the complex foundation is really tricky a lot of times.
And I've said,
watched you spend hours and hours and hours trying to place notes in just the right spot, but it's like 2 notes,
Right. Yeah. If you take something like Winter Still, that's a super, in my opinion, for us, what we're doing, it's a pretty rudimentary version of that. Not to take away from the song. I think the song, I love the song. It's got a life, but I'm talking purely technical, compositionally, how to begin. Now, if you take something like, The Drift, or something like, there's several songs on the last record that sound very easy to listen to and streamlined, that the counts on them are all whacked out. And if you try to learn them, it's much harder than it sounds.
Would you say, Trav, I get the impression also, like what you were saying is just not having 4 or 6 or 5 in mind. You just play free. But it seems to me sometimes you'll play to something that's more like 8th notes, like this. And that, so that if you had quarter note pulse, you're still going to always be able to bob your head. But if it's like this, maybe it is something that gets like a little more
13,
shifty.
8
yeah.
Sure.
Winter Still made me think of that because you said, is that 5/8? And I realized we've had this conversation. You do phrase in 5/8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Right.
And I'm thinking of half that speed. But if you had it on a slower pulse, you probably would have had something that resolves in an even, it would be 4/8, it would be 4/4, 6/8, 10, something like that. So, and then every faster subdivision, you have more maneuverability. Like once in a while, I've gotten back in the days when there wouldn't be demo drums, and it's just Travis giving me a demo with a metronome. Every once in a while, it'll be you know, and
Right,
you're just,
like
you
16
realize,
notes.
yeah. And the faster it is, the weirder it sounds when you're trying to make sense of it, but the freer he is to phrase however he wants.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to jump on what you're saying, but
No, that's a good point because yes, the smaller the subdivisions, the more flexibility you have with those crazy, like you said, you could have friggin' 19/16 or some weird. And I know you always appreciate those measures when the whole song is in, 7/8, and suddenly it's like, no, we're gonna make this measure, whatever,
yes,
13/8.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and so that goes back to just
That's like Return to Zero. Okay, this is an old song. The whole song is in what is it? I guess 5,
9.
right? 9, pardon me. Oh yeah,
9/8, yeah.
And there's like one measure that is not.
And I honestly think, if I remember the story right, actually, that was me blowing it. Like, I think there was like a drum fill or something it was supposed to be drums, and I just added one note, and you guys called me, and I was like, no, listen, it's 9, and then finally, I was just wrong. You're just like, it's 10, you lied. So there's one measure of that is me blowing it,
right.
it.
Yeah, just one in the whole song.
Yes, yeah.
And rather than correct it, of course, we just kept it.
Yeah, and just name the song after the Return to.
Sure, why not? Return to Zero.
Right. So as far as that goes, that's one of the ways that I start as far as being creative. And then this is something that gets said a lot. I'm going to be talking about this on Monday with Andy and Mike and Teddy on another one of these casts.
That's going to be cool. I can't wait to tune into that.
I know.
What time? Monday?
I believe it's 6 Pacific time.
Okay.
But it's going to be right here. You'll be able to find it in this same bat time, same bat channel, except it's a different time. But yeah, 6 p.m. Monday, I'll be on here with Andy Timmons and Mike Keneally and Teddy Kumpel, who is a guitar player for Joe Jackson. And all guys that I love, that we've all jammed together. And I've toured quite a bit with Mike and Andy over the years. And so going back to the point of what I was going to go with after having a seed for an idea is that a lot of guys, and these guys have said this, the songs kind of write themselves. Mm-hmm. And now I think for a non-musician or a non-artist, that can be really confused as it's easy. Mm-hmm. And that's not what I mean at all. What I mean is, if you think about a guy who's sculpting a big, like a big stone sculpture, you think about how much work that is and how hard it is, right? But that guy has a vision for what he wants to do. And so you're continually chipping away, and you kind of always know what the next move is going to be based on the last move. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit like a big puzzle. And that's kind of the way music is a lot of times for me, where once I have a foundation for something, so you do have to start there. Technically, you have to think, unless something just comes to you, and that does happen. But if I'm talking about when you sit down and you say, I have to be productive as a songwriter right now, then just playing randomly, creatively over some kind of a time reference, coming up with an idea, and then starting to play over that. And then as the further you get into it, the more fun it gets, because then you start
ideas coming together.
Yeah, ideas compound more ideas. Yeah, and so when I hear guys say, well, the song kind of writes itself. So this is going to segue into a question that Fritz asked. So Fritz said, previous time Jen said something that stuck in my mind. Not getting much music done because you lack creativity when worried. I have that problem for some time now. So how do you guys get to write? I guess that's kind of what I'm saying right now is, and that is a thing. It's hard. Sometimes it's really easy to sit down and just be creative. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it just flows out of you because life is so good and you feel good and you're pumped up and you've got adrenaline just every day, just from life being exciting. Mm-hmm. And so you sit down and it's just, oh man, stuff starts coming out, but like in these times, for even yours truly, it can get a little less than inspiring because, I mean, speaking for myself, I've been sitting in this cave like we mentioned last week, I came out of the NAMM show and I had my wisdom teeth pulled. So I've been here since the NAMM show, basically in this house by myself, trying not to fall prey to eating nothing but donuts and watching reruns of WKRP.
Or really bad old 1970s movies.
Right.
But yeah.
Well, you can't rent those anymore. So it doesn't. So to answer Fritz's question, I think that obviously, number one, just as human beings, we always have to kind of not focus so much and spin so much on what's going on around us to a point where we become stifled by it. Yes, we're all trying to be responsible, and yes, we're all trying to deal with the situation at hand and be safe. But what is it that is besides, I mean, I know there's many, many obstacles out there, and I don't want to start a debate, but if you're stuck in your house for a while, and maybe there's times in your life where you wish you were stuck in your house, try and think about those times. For us as musicians, I do love touring. I love being out there playing with these guys more than anything else, but there's times where you do get tired out there, and there's times where you wished nothing more than you were just home, curled up on the couch and not having to go anywhere. So try and think in terms of that so that you're not feeling so much anxiety about not being able to do something, and look at it as an opportunity to do something that you can't normally do. And try and get your mental state a little more positive, and then sit down just like you would with any project and just force yourself to start. That's the main thing. Like, no matter how much you feel like I just don't have this in me right now, force yourself to sit down and start coming up with something. Give it 30 minutes, 45 minutes where you really sit there and start working on something.
I would like to add to that, though, that, as musicians, creativity doesn't always have to come from a musical place. I mean, just being creative with anything that you do, whether it's like making an awesome meal and being creative with it, you know what I mean? That gets those kinds of thought processes going too, where you're like, I'm just not into, I'm just going to have a microwave meal right now. That's the same thing as feeling like I don't want to try. But if you're like, you know what, I'm going to make myself an awesome meal right now. I'm going to make something up out of whatever. So I'm just saying it doesn't have to be so specific to music. Just getting the creativity flowing in other ways too. It
goes back to an overall mindset.
Right.
Which is like what you're saying. And I'll be honest with you, it's been a lot easier for me to really dig in and make a lot of awesome meals.
Right. I know. Travis keeps sending me pictures of his meals.
Yeah.
I'm like,
you know what? Last time we talked about this, Jen, you mentioned a Nick Cave article that was, he was talking a little bit about that. And I did go back and read that. And that one of the things I took away from it, I'm not sure if it was, one of the points he was making struck me, which was that as artists, being present in your life informs your art. And we're all experiencing a really unique patch in our life right now. And like he was pointing out, if you're feeling like you don't want to sit and grind, just be present in your life right now. And it is going to inform future art. And it was interesting to me how quickly after reading that, it felt like I could already sort of feel what's going on right now in my life, making me want, like, leading itself to a place where I want to create, if that makes sense.
Yeah, right. Yes, I have sensed that too. Like, yeah, I know what you're talking about, where you're like, okay, it's okay. And Brian Beller actually posted a cool little quick video. Trav pointed out to me, and I watched it the other day, and where he's like, it doesn't always have to be about output. Sometimes you have to input. And if you suck that in, then at some point it's gonna output. That's just the law of some kind of law of nature, whatever. I don't know what it is. But, and right now it's okay for us to like input and take things in and just take a breath so that it'll output eventually.
Yeah.
And I think everyone feels like all this pressure, like, oh my God, I have to do the thing. And
I will. I just want to clarify for Fritz, just because he's still.
Did we get off topic?
Well, he's still tuned in. I just want to say that when you force yourself to do something like that, and to support what you just said, if it's just not going to work that day, that's totally okay.
Right.
But what I'm saying is if you give it 30, 45 minutes where you really sit there and really dig into this, even if you're like, oh man, I just don't feel like doing this. Most of the time,
something happens.
Most of the time you start to forget that you thought that when you sat down.
And that is 90% of that. That part is 90% of the discipline, I find. Like as a teacher, I'm always trying to get people to practice, and old timey, like a generation ago, teachers would always tell you how much to practice. And my constant, when I'm talking to students, I'm always telling them basically what you're saying about writing, which is don't think about how much you have to play. Don't think about what is going to be tedious. The whole discipline part is dragging your ass over there, sitting down and starting to play. And then you always do the thing where you're like, wow, why don't I do this more often? It's just, like, and then the next day you can't get yourself to start. Yeah. So Travis is totally right. You just got to start.
It's almost like the similar thing is like exercising. Nobody wants to go start that. But once you do and you're in it, you're like, oh my God, I feel amazing. And why don't I always do this?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to interrupt this conversation really quick with who's the man?
Okay. And then I got another question.
Okay. You ready? James Brown versus Chuck Berry.
I'm going to say in my world, but that again, they're both.
I know what your world is. I know your answer.
In my world, it's got to be Chuck Berry because Chuck Berry invented the rock guitar guy.
And I'm going to go ahead and it's like the Supreme Court. There's a dissenting opinion because you want that opinion to be heard. They
started in a funk band.
Yeah. You're right that Chuck Berry is more impacted us, but I'm going to go ahead and point out how much James Brown, speaking of discipline versus just like creative spark, like a guy who just, so many of those drummers are like the whole band's not even just the drummers, just so tight. It's ridiculous. And it goes to what we were saying too, of just hard work, making great music. I bet those guys were pissed off at him half the time they were playing, but it was great music. Yeah. But you're right, Chuck Berry.
Wow. No, it's, whatever you. Oh,
yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
All right. What's the question, Travis?
Werner says, if you could invite any musician, dead or alive, to do a guest solo on your next album, who would that be? All three answers, please. I'll start with me and say that I will also let me start by saying the fact that the only time we've ever done guest spots on our record is people that we really wanted on a musical level, and there's many other opportunities that I'm being careful here, as it's nothing detrimental to or I'm not trying to talk poorly about anyone, but there's guys that musically was not what we would want to do that commercially might have been a really big deal, right? But then there's guys that might have been, they're just the perfect thing, like and it opens itself up to a good couple of stories. But so let's tell our answers, and then I'll tell a couple of stories. So
I'd have to think about this one.
Answer, I mean, we've done several things that are absolutely what I wanted to do, and they were the vision that we had. We had Victor Wooten play on Georgia. That was something that we still play to this day that we did almost 20 years ago. And that was because it was just the right guy for the right song, and the vibe was perfect. Same thing with Steve Lukather doing kind of a Beck tribute, right? Yep. Vinx was a complete
out of nowhere
sidebar stylistically, where we did a song and we asked him to do percussion, and he wrote an entire song with like 50 tracks to this piece.
Oh, we lost you for a second, Trav. You're gonna have to repeat something.
I'm back. The Vinx piece, which is called Seclusion with You, which is actually the title to 2 different songs, which became the same song. Seclusion was originally a duet that Jen and I were doing with with you was the Vinx song. So anyway, that song was completely different than anyone would expect us to put on a record, but it was just something cool to do with a guy that we loved. So it's always about that. It's about the music and a guy that you love, which is about.
Just to bring up another one, LaRue on the solo
exactly.
for Fuzzy. It's just like, right. There couldn't have been a more perfect player for that.
Well, and I will say, an example of, one of the reasons we have not done a lot with the Steve Morris, Dave LaRue camp is because we're so influenced by them that we didn't think it would, it's kind of like putting, I'm not going to make any comparisons, but we're so influenced by them. It's taking the seed of what we are and putting it right next to us, and it doesn't seem necessary. Whereas with the song, so when we finally had Dave play on a tune, it was to do something that he hadn't done, and we hadn't really done. It was way more of a fusion-y, kind of a Latin-y thing. It was more of like, it was more almost like he's got that kind of Florida salsa vibe going on, for lack of a better description in that song. And so that was something that none of us had done. So it was interesting to do it. And we love Dave. I mean, he is a great friend of ours for a long time, and obviously a huge influence. So, but so for something in the future, it would have to be exactly the right guy. You couldn't say to me, player X, Y, or Z wants to be on the record, and just because they sold 1 million records, they could be on the record. I know that's like shooting ourselves in the foot, but that's how it's been.
Okay, well, so who's your guy, or who?
Well, somebody that we were going to try and have that we can't have is T. Lavitz.
Yeah.
That was somebody that I was looking forward to having that didn't happen. So, that's a little heartbreaking. From like old school, I mean, there's so many guys, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
that's a hard one to come up with. Thanks, Werner. Like, I needed that brain freeze.
Everybody thinks I'm falling asleep. Was I yawning or something?
I didn't see anything.
A whole bunch of wake up Dales going on.
Oh.
Being respectful of other people's space.
Last week they want you to get naked. Now they want you to wake up.
Yeah, I know. Whatever. So I want to point out that I think it's interesting. The first two that jumped to my mind were Victor Wooten and Steve Lukather. And in case people wonder if it's awkward or anything, like when there's a guest because somebody's being displaced, I thought it's interesting that Jennifer chased down Victor Wooten. Well, not chased down, but, discussed with him and then replaced herself. And then Trav was like, well, let's get Steve Lukather, and replaced him, or, replaced part of himself for part of that song.
Right.
And
then we need to get a drummer on the next.
I know. I'll throw out that one of the things that's always bounced around in my mind. I dig what you're saying, where it's usually been somebody who we're close to, and there's an energy that's appropriate for them being on our album. And like you're saying, there's some great players who we wouldn't ask or haven't. But I always, in the back of my mind, we don't know him, but I could totally imagine Simon Phillips being on a track. I happen to know that Trav really likes, Simon's playing, but he would just be such a perfect person for what this band seems to do, which is create technical music that ends up trying to feel really organic and not cerebral. And I just have a feeling it would be awesome, but I don't know if we could ever make it happen. But
it's funny how in not to get off on a side note here, but his projects with players that do their own thing, some of their playing in his projects is some of my favorite, just because it opens it up to different things. Like I loved hearing Andy play in Protocol, things like that.
Yeah.
Obviously I love Andy anyway, but like it was interesting to hear him do something that wasn't that was not all Andy.
Yep.
Are you having a problem?
Sorry, my computer went to sleep.
It's like Kramer over. Oh, I see.
Did I do something weird? Sorry. My screen just went.
You just randomly kicked it.
That might have happened too, simultaneously. Sorry, I get a little wiggly sometimes, as you both well know. In the van. Get me out of here.
I would have loved to have T. Lavitz on the record. It would have happened, and it would have been something that we don't have live. I mean, I play a little keyboards, and I play a lot of keyboards on the records, but it would have been nice to have another keyboard energy.
Yeah.
And he was that goes back to the person too. Obviously, I'm a huge Keith Emerson fan. I started playing music. One of the reasons was the LP. But do I want to work with Keith Emerson? It might be a little intimidating, right? Whereas anybody that knows T or knew T, T was the Woody Allen of music. I mean, as far as just him being such a funny, that might not be a good reference these days. Sorry, but
right, I didn't even think of that. Right.
I mean, like T was such a great personality and such a good dude, So,
what about you, Jen?
I don't know. I'm still trying. I'm trying to be present in this conversation, and so I haven't had time to think. Yeah, I don't know.
Jay Sims, what's up?
I may have to get back to you on that, Werner.
You guys ponder it, and maybe we'll
actually,
come back.
The thing that popped into my head first, but I don't know how appropriate this is for TLB, but personally, like the first thing that popped into my head was Miles Davis.
Well, same here, but again, too intimidating.
Well,
True.
But I mean, there's we have incorporated some kind of brass instrument type of things in the past, and I don't know. That was the first thing that popped into my head was Miles Davis.
Right.
And yeah, of course, nice. Intimidating. Forget it. But could you imagine? Oh my God, So that was my first instinct.
That is cool. I would be blacked out from intimidation.
Right. We all just be like.
That's the thing. Here's what I love. This is a side note, and then we'll move on to another question. But I love about Miles Davis and Jeff Beck that they both became kind of similar guys later in their career, where they literally walk out and the band is just burning, and they just play like one note.
Right.
And it's the coolest thing you've ever heard, right?
It's the coolest note ever.
And it's like cooking, and it's like, Burn.
Yeah.
You're like, oh.
And there's always they can leave.
Yeah, and there's a journey to the next note. You'll wait for them to find the next awesome note.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, let's see. I had one here. Stuff keeps moving, so I lost it. Here it is. Early influences. That was another question I wanted to expound upon from the last week. Early influences. This is Anthony Kimball.
Anthony.
Early influences in music, both musician and friends or family. That's so stuff that people don't necessarily know. I mean, a lot of people that I know of our generation that are doing this kind of have the same story I do, which is, my brother is 9 years older. I used to hear him playing Brain Salad Surgery through the wall, or Pink Floyd, or something like that. And that's when we had like wood paneling on the wall and green shag carpet, and
record players.
He had a fro, and there'd be incense burning in his room, and there was just like such a vibe to that. Like, and so, he was doing that. That was my first real exposure to music, which is why interesting music is ingrained in my DNA. And then when I started asking to get guitar records, ironically, my very first record was, this is like asking, family to buy me records, right? Oh, I like that. I think I like the guitar. I think I like electric guitar. And so they bought me a 38 Special. And then my very first cassette, I think I mentioned last week, maybe I can't remember, was The Cars. The first song I ever heard on a cassette was Since You Gone.
Oh, wow.
Since You Gone. Which
that's not bad.
Has anything to do with what I'm doing. And as I progressed on, I grew up in such a beautiful time where you could actually see Herbie Hancock and Chick Corea jamming on the Merv Griffin show on television.
What?
So, so seeing that, I started, so So my first, thing was stuff you heard on the radio. It was like the Rolling Stones and stuff like that. That's my first high. I mentioned that like last week. And then when I started seriously thinking I would like to try this, it was, I was exposed to music from my brother, and then being able to see guys like that on television was ridiculous. Like I wanted to be Herbie Hancock. I wanted to be Chick Corea. I wanted to be Paul Schaefer in the early days of the Letterman show, just because he had all these cool stacks of keyboards all over. Like, I'll take away the fourth wall here for a second. Is that how you say it? The fourth wall or third wall? And so this is right here, all due to that, right? So
keyboard land,
right? That's all because of that time in my life. And then you get to a time in your life where you're able to create that for yourself for a little while, and you go, okay, I'm gonna do that. Yeah. So anyway, those are some really early influences.
Dale.
That's cool. I like that approach instead of naming the players who shaped your playing once you were already going. I'm going to I've said a lot how, I've been influenced by Neil Peart and Dave Garibaldi from Tower of Power and all the jazz fusion guys. But I like what you were talking about, Trav. I can remember when I was just learning to play drums and hadn't really thought about different styles and things, hearing about Tower of Power and getting back to Oakland, that album, and just hearing the first song just making me think, wow, why do drummers always play the same beats all the time? This is crazy. And then I remember also getting Romantic Warrior by Return to Forever, the Chick Corea album. I couldn't even grasp it whatsoever. It just seemed amazing and fun. And then the third thing that jumped into my head was my cousin, who's also a drummer. His dad was a drummer, and he had all this vinyl. And I had heard about Mahavishnu Orchestra, but I would never have been able to find any or hear any. And I found The Intermounting Flame, I think, and put it on. And
these are some great titles, by the way.
What's that?
Some great titles, by the way.
Right, I know. This is the nerdiest things ever.
Intermounting Flame.
And by then I was playing enough, like it was way beyond me, but I literally remember going, huh, what is this? And just randomly counting a few things, and I got lucky, like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it didn't work. And then I landed on 9 and it worked. And I'm like, this is how you crack the code. You just start counting numbers and one will work out. And yeah, that really influenced me as a player, because I just got lucky and I didn't walk away going, it's impossible, I can't figure it out. I just sort of went, oh, you sit and count long enough, you can start figuring out what they're doing.
Some kind of Fibonacci sequence thing going on.
Nice. Yeah, so those were super early influences for me, just of hearing things. Jen?
I have a silly story about one of my memories of influences. Travis knows this one. Led Zeppelin, of course.
It's a good story.
The Lemon Song. Playing it on my record player. And that bass line is the most amazing bass line ever. And my dad is like a huge influence to me.
Picture Robert Duvall in any cowboy movie. That's Jen's dad.
And I was just so excited about that song and the bass line. And I was like, Dad, you gotta hear this most amazing thing ever. And so I pull him, I'm like, listen to this. And all I heard was the bass line. Like, lyrics? What? I don't,
Not the overt sexual innuendo.
Right. And so of course, my dad hears, his 14-year-old daughter listening to this song is obviously the lyrics to the Lemon Song. And I was like, no. He got very upset. And I was, no, what are you talking about? And the bass line. So that was not the most. I remember it. It was memorable because I was.
Yeah, he's just talking about making juice.
Yeah.
Lemon. Yeah. What? Lemonade. That's fine, Dad. Anyway, that was one of my earliest memories of something that I was so influenced by, and then suddenly, like, it was not good. Anyway.
Let me shoot through some stuff here. Some of these are a reference to earlier stuff. So let's see.
In reference to earlier stuff, yes, I am drinking out of my rocket mug still.
Nice.
But I also have an alternative beverage in my moon mug.
An alternative or an adult beverage?
I just, let's leave it at alternative.
So I have another quick Who's the Man?
Okay.
Hamburgers versus hot dogs. I know that me, Dale, were like, we can't, whatever.
Right, yeah.
Dale or Travis?
Well, it depends on it. I guess it's kind of the difference between, I mean, like one of those is like food and one of those is just pure joy, right? It's like the difference between.
That's the answer I was looking for. Okay.
There you go. Yeah, I can't top that. As long as we're anthropomorphizing food.
Okay, on to a real question.
I do take an occasional trip to the Costco food court. I'll just say that.
You're right. Yeah.
So
Trav does enjoy a good dog.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just saying Trav does enjoy a good dog.
So I was going to say, Danny asks, do we all play with a click when practicing or writing? So covered the writing part. In the early days, no. Now, yes. And that's just because part of the reason that band is as tight as we are is because we do that. You can change all kinds of different timings in a song. Oh,
lost you for a second.
But if you're not solid, it's hard for the band to be solid. So click tracks are a little bit essential in that regard with us these days. Plus, makes it possible to work on ideas independently, remotely, if we're passing ideas around, those kind of things. And when we practice for our sets, when we're actually practicing Travis Larson Band material, every time we mix an album, we mix a version for each of us. So every song we have to mix like several times. We mix a version with just drums and extraneous things for Jen and I to play to. If we're doing a duo clinic or some kind of appearance at a record store or something, we mix a version for me with no guitar, which is much more complicated than muting the lead guitar. I never do that. I mute sections that I would play live, meaning when we mix the record, I have to figure out how I'm going to play it live. So that way, if we're ever playing live and say we do a lot of sample triggering and things like that, being a big Rush influenced band, if that stuff takes a dump, I'm never stuck playing something stupid. Well, if I am, it's because I came up with it. But so again, going back to a song, this is just the most layered, obvious, easy song to use as a reference. But Winter Still is another. Winter Still is a layered song. It was basically written much like a looping song where I play a part, I play the next part, I play the next part, and they all stack on top of each other and so on. So when I play that live, I play the next part every single time. I don't have a loop that comes in that does the section that I haven't played. So that is the basis for everything we do, even if it's not a repetitive song. But if there's anything extraneous in the song, it's never necessary, if that makes sense. It's always icing on the cake. And I'm always playing the most interesting guitar part of the section that I'm playing for. So I'm always playing the melody or the harmony to the melody after I've done it. Or if there's a rhythm part, I'm playing that. I'm never like just, sticking to a thing that supports something that's being.
We understand.
Okay.
It is fun, even like you said.
I understand.
Like you said, you're not stuck playing something stupid, but it is fun when the tracks fail. Watching Travis decide every 8 measures of the 6 parts that are about to exist, which one should I play now?
The worst case of that was in 1997 or 8 when we were playing the Summerfest in Milwaukee.
Oh, brother!
And we were doing, and it was on it was the Rate of Change tour, and we were playing Winter Still on that tour for the first time, and that was the first song that was so stacked like that, where it was kind of integral to the song, and the whole thing took a crap. And then
I wiped that from my memory.
I just played every part that I was supposed to play, and when we got done, nobody knew the difference.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And they hadn't heard the song at that point either. But I never played anything that was boring because the way we composed those backing tracks. And so going back to how we practice, if we're practicing to something that was recorded to a click, it's always going to be solid. And if I'm always playing the next part that I should be playing,
right.
It's
also, I think, a little bit psychological. Oopsie. Like, you have played that part, and say when it did crap out, that part's missing, but the listener had just heard it, so it's kind of already there, and then you move on to the next thing. It's psychologically in their brains, they don't miss it as much.
Right.
That's
right.
the hope.
No, this thing keeps jumping up. Let's see, Oscar says, have you guys considered bringing a special guest on? Well, we talked about that.
Yeah.
I'm sure in the future there'll be some special guest. Not who you think it's going to be.
What, we're not interesting enough? What? No.
Well, he says Andy Keneally, et cetera. And that's the thing. We have a wealth of good friends. And I will say one of the beauties of being able to play music, and one of the magical things that has been over the years has actually become a reality, when for so long you think there's just no way it will, is that those guys become your friends. I saw Jennifer and I saw Steve Vai like a long time ago on his first there, I'm back. And that was the first time we saw Mike Keneally, and it wasn't the first time we saw Mike Keneally wasn't playing with Vai and Vai's band, but it was opening for Vai.
Yeah.
And what was so great about him was his personality, because it was one of these places where they had like 4 Bion bands, and you had to you had to wait from band to band to band, most of them local bands that, bless their hearts, were learning how to do it. And then the curtain opens and everyone thinks it's going to be Vai, because it's been like 3 hours, and it's Mike Keneally's little trio opening for Vai. And he was so awesome. And so the thing starts to open. He goes, okay, let me explain what's going on right now. I'm not Steve Vai. And it was just so great that I was like, I love this guy. And so being, really good friends with him now, decades later, that's the kind of stuff, that's what music's all about, being friends with guys like Andy. And, it's like a lot of people, going back to the commercial moves in the business, where so many guys I see are out there trying to get guys on their records. And if it's not the right thing and you're doing it just because you want this guy on your record, I will tell you that it's not going to bring you that much exposure, honestly. It's more about the conversation that you're going to have with these guys. And if you can get to a point where you're having a conversation with them musically and they're actually your friends, that's really what it's all about. That's the magic. The magic is the stuff that nobody sees. The magic is standing in a dressing room with Andy Timmons or Mike Keneally and joking around, and becoming friends with people that you would never become friends with. I'm not talking about fame. I've said many times at clinics, how does a guy like me, like some, punk surfer from the West Coast, get to be friends with some 80-year-old black man from the South, or, some, death metal rocker guy who's 25, and like, we're all so different. And yet, you see guys that you get to be friends with, and you hug and kiss them, and you love these people. And there's no way I would ever know so many of these people, So that's what music's all about. I'm not sure where I started with the question, but
I look forward to the day where we get to hug and kiss people again.
Yes.
I'm just saying.
Gary says, how was it to open for Flying Colors? It was funny because Flying Colors gig was a last minute gig. We actually didn't know we were doing that until a few days beforehand. It was, it was fine. It was honestly, it was at the end of the Aristocrats tour. And so it was kind of just another gig, except the fact that we got to hang out with Steve that night. And Steve's one of my all-time favorite players and people. And the reason that we got to do that gig. And the other thing is that he borrowed half of my rig that night because it was a fly-in. So what was so great about that, this is like the behind the scenes technical stuff as an artist, but usually if you're the opening band, going back to what we were talking about a minute ago, where you've got like 4 or 5 buy-on bands and everybody just gets, just pooped on. It's like those early bands get treated terrible. They've got to get on, they've got to get off really fast. They don't get a sound check. But because, I probably we would have been treated right anyway because it's Steve. But because Steve was using my rig, I didn't even have to move anything or have anything moved, or like I had my rig up and hot and wired the whole set, and I could just like walk off and then go kick back and watch the show. So that was my big fun memory of that show.
I like the point where he's asking how you run your rig, and you're like, "Well, I do it like this." Like, that's how I do it. And
right. Oddly enough.
Yeah.
I took every cue I have from him, and it's like, well, do you have an aux in for guests? Yes, I do. Just like
yeah.
All right, you guys. How you feeling about this time length here? I know that some people might feel that we yak a little too much. So shall we call it early, or are you good?
I think we should keep going for a little bit.
I see a
lot of questions that we haven't answered.
I'm just trying to moderate.
Yep.
The sleepy time people. Okay, what?
I was going to say, I see a good question, Trav, but if you already have some in
what is it, Dale?
Kate King says, Travis, Jen, and Dale, was there a defining moment / experience in your memory that made you think, this is what I'm going to do? I want to play music for a living. Or was it more of an evolving collection of experiences?
Wow.
I will say for myself, I'm just going to tell the Billy Joel story real quick. He did a master class at a music school out on Long Island a couple of years ago. And a guy stood up and said, when did you know that you were supposed to do this? He goes, I'm getting into college now, and I'm trying to decide whether I go this route or that route and all that kind of stuff. And Billy said, if you're asking me the question, you already know the answer. So my answer is that it was not a choice. And if I had a choice, maybe I would be doing something easier, but it's more of a
calling.
Well, yeah, there's, I go on all night, but there's definitely something broken in anybody that really is an artist. There's a reason we're artists, and it's because we're broken on a level, right?
When you said broken, it at least on my screen, it did a thing, and you went broken. You're like emphasize the broken right there.
Right.
Sorry.
Dale? I can really remember a moment where I always just felt like you hear these stories about all the dues people pay, and I just felt like there's some people who think they're hardcore, but when it gets rough, they want some security and comfort. And I was the opposite. I always felt like I don't think I'm hardcore like these other people, but every turn I was just choosing like not to have stability. And at some point, I was an engineering student, and I had a really good job as an engineer for PG&E. I was making more money than I ever had in my life. And when it came time that I could have really tied into that, I just let it go so I could tour with the brokest R&B reggae band on the planet. What's up, Eric Cotton? And so, right. And it was not even a hard decision. And I just remember going, I keep thinking I'm not the hardcore guy, but I think I'm that guy. I think this is what I do. I didn't have any money. I just had like a 20-pound bag of rice, and I lived in a warehouse that was illegal for me to be living in. So I was hiding everything, and there was no shower. And I was like, this is fine. This is perfect. That's what I want to do.
There's nobody more hardcore in this band than Dale.
Yeah.
I mean, on that level,
right. Yeah.
You could argue about work hours or ethic or whatever, but as far as a guy that's just willing to do anything.
Yeah. But I was slow to realize it. I think I thought I wasn't that guy. And it took me till I was in college to realize I just turned down the best job I'm ever going to have in my life to be broke. And I just didn't even think twice about it. So I think I'm the hardcore guy. I think I'm the guy who think this is what I do. So, Jen?
Wait, what was the question again?
When did you know you're going to do this? I think is the basic.
Oh.
Was there a defining moment or experience in your memory that made you think this is what I'm going to do? Or was it just a collection of things?
That's a tough one for me.
She's still figuring it out.
I'm still figuring it out. Right. No.
I think
that I've always just wanted to facilitate others who I knew had to do this. I don't have that thing like Travis and I think Dale do, where they just know, and I have to do this. This is like I said, my calling. Calling is not the right word, but I didn't have that. But I can see how divine that kind of is when people do have that. And I always have felt like I wanted to facilitate people who have that knowing. So that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Although Jen does like to headbang a little bit on a good night.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong. I like to rock out.
Speaking of rocking out, Rodney asked any punk influences. Now, interesting question, because I'm going to say, again, being California guy, growing up with, I talk a lot about the Rollins work ethic. So I was a huge Rollins Band guy, which is kind of post-punk in a way. Like, I guess they call them modern stuff punk, but I'm talking about real punk. Just sound like an old man, but I wasn't a huge Black Flag guy, because I did like things to be clean and precise, or performed, with less abandon, I guess. But the Rollins Band was like a fusion band playing punk rock. And that was so energetic and so pumping that I dug that a lot. And so that was definitely, some of that stuff is definitely in there.
I got sort of indirectly influenced by some early Red Hot Chili Peppers, which sounds weird, but if your first exposure to them was Blood Sugar Sex Magic, and you go back and listen to Out in LA or Freaky Styley, there's some weird music on those albums, and some of it's fast, and I think the whole reason it influenced me was I was learning to play, and it was like I hadn't done like the punk polka before, and so I learned to think that fast, and that was.
Jen's going to be the most legit.
Yeah.
No, that's not true.
That's absolutely true. You remember how long I've known you.
I don't know. Yeah, I dug the Sex Pistols. What can I say?
When I met Jen, she was wearing a army jacket. She had just left a punk band.
Well, I don't know. I was from Southern California, so I guess I kind of did get into that scene a little bit. Do you guys remember the Dead Milkmen?
Yes. You know what Keneally said yesterday? Said that the what's the band that started out as college band? The don't start. I've got a weak heart. This is the worst part. What's that song?
I don't know who it is.
It's like the Dead Milkmen, but the two guys. It's a duo. The two guys. One of them kind of looks like John Chacon, and one of them is like a skinnier guy. Come on, Dale, you know this. We're talking
sorry.
Is it a college band?
Well, they're a huge famous band now, but they haven't played in years. But they started out like one of those bands, like in the late 80s, early 90s, kind of at the beginning of alternative.
What about them?
They influenced Keneally, and you could totally hear it, and I had no idea.
Oh, I see.
But I've always thought he sounds a lot like them in a way, with like kind of the quirky thing. And not Zappa quirky, but kind of like the way I was just saying, kind of the quirky, goofy vocal thing, and with some humor in certain things.
Yeah, right.
And he said that band was like an influence, and I was like, I've always heard that, but I would never have thought to ask, because different world, right?
Yep.
So
totally different.
So think of that band.
Yeah, right. I know.
Somebody will pop up with it.
I used to play Loco Ranchero.
One of my students is one of my better drum students. Hey, Josh, is getting into a super punk phase right now. And it's super fun for me. First of all, I get to go back through a lot of that stuff, but there's a lot, there are better contemporary punk bands than I would have known. Like there's some serious people making some awesome punk right now I didn't have any idea about. So that's kind of fun. I can't name any of it.
I was going to say, like who?
No.
All right.
Here's just a simple one. What's your favorite venue to play? People get asked that a lot, and my answer is always it's about the people, not the venue. And one of my favorite venues to play, which is if you walked into it on like Thursday afternoon, you'd look around and go, they even play here? You can fit a band in here? But it's the Bistro in Hayward, which is a place we play all the time. And that's because it just packs in with like the most open-minded, open-eared, coolest people. It's like a Bay Area scene of people, same kind of people that would listen to Keneally, or any kind of out there musicians, relatively out there, compared to commercial music. So that's a favorite place, just because I know it's always going to be fun and it's always going to be good.
Mhm.
That's like our North California baked potato equivalent, I suppose.
Kind of.
I mean, big, huge venues, those are always fun to play, but they kind of just, when you're doing something like the Aristocrat Store and you're playing a lot of theaters and things like that, that's across the board. Every night's kind of just fun because it's those gigs. But on a gig where
the crappy ones stand out, and then as opposed to, oh, that was a good one.
Yeah, sometimes the crappy ones are so crappy that those are the ones you really remember. And I don't have any issue talking about the gig with us and Mike Keneally, where we had a gig at the Iridium booked, and we had to change it like 4 days beforehand because for some reason there was some sort of MTV event, and the MTV people own the Iridium or something like that. So we found the worst hole in the wall in the world in the Bowery in New York and played that. And I don't remember the name of it.
The Left Field Bar.
Yeah. And I guarantee you we won't go back, but it was one of the funnest nights on a completely ridiculous level. That just even loading in, it was a one-way street. And because they were doing construction, so you could only keep driving. It's Manhattan, right? And so I had to park on the sidewalk to load the van.
All the way on the sidewalk, not two wheels. It's just like, we're just parked on the sidewalk.
And you're hauling as fast as you can, getting everybody grab your stuff, because if one of those like horse cops walks around the corner, we're screwed,
And it was all downstairs. Well, no, wasn't there like a ton of stairs and just like labyrinth? It was like a labyrinth.
Yeah, it was like walk all the way to the end of the building, take a corner, and then walk all the way to the front of the building.
I don't know. Yeah, it was awful. And there were 3 different stages.
You could literally touch like from one wall to another. It was that narrow. Like you could stand in the middle of the stage.
3 levels of stage.
Yeah.
Remember how we stuck Joe Travers back in that window?
It was a stage cake.
Yeah. It was a stage cake.
Have I heard of Brett Garsed from Australia? Yeah, Brett is amazing. He plays on an older record that's great with Bobby Rock on drums. It's Bobby Rock's record. Is it Out of Bounds, I think? Brett Garsed plays on a lot of stuff. He's amazing. And he does this crazy hybrid picking where it sounds like he's doing a two-handed technique, and he'll do like what sound like sweeps and things like that, but he's using one finger each string with his right picking hand. So
can you mimic it with your mouth?
He'll do like, but he's like picking. This is his picking hand, right? So he'll do sweeps.
So like it's not like it's like.
Speaking of that, I saw Bobby Rock posted earlier with a mask on from LA. If there's a scarier looking guy with a mask on,
you don't know who that is,
right?
In all these years, people say like, when you go to hotel gyms, are they crowded? And the answer is there's never, ever, ever, ever anybody in a hotel gym except me Bobby. If I'm there. And then the one time we did that, Lita Ford, who shared a stage with Lita and Bobby was playing drums, I went in and right away, I was just sort of like, not wanting to invade the person's space. And then I was like, oh, it's Bobby Rock. Of course, that would be the guy in the gym.
Okay, a quick throwback. Thank you to Chuck, Vicky, Jeff, and Susan. They might be giants.
I was, yep. Okay, cool.
You were, but you didn't. So what good are you?
Yeah. And Josh points out that the bands I couldn't think of were Dystopia, Leftover Crack, and Choking Victim as good punk bands.
Awesome.
I'm just checking.
Remember the time we did the South by Southwest and we came up with all of those band names?
Yeah.
One of them was like Prison Crap or something like that.
Probably.
Remember like making up band names based on just watching these punk bands on? I'll have to find that list. Next week, tune in the list of punk bands from South by Southwest.
Well, there was remember there was a band that toured and opened for us or we shared a bill with them, and they wanted to know what TLB was.
Yeah.
And they came up with, like 101 things that TLB could be.
Yeah.
Yes. We'll have to find that list.
Mostly
Tiny
juvenile and
little
obscene
booty.
Mostly juvenile and obscene.
and awesome.
Those lousy bastards. All right, I think maybe it's getting past bedtime for East Coasters again.
Okay. I'm just quickly make sure I don't miss anything important. I think we're getting to the end here.
Are you gonna take us out again, Dale? I think you should do a country thing because I got a new prop.
Wait. Judy says, I've never seen a band so great together. What's the secret of being in a vehicle for days together? Well, it's Who's the Man?
Who's the Man? A final Who's the Man? Let me see here. What do I have? Oh no, we have done this one before.
Have on
not on
streaming?
air.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
This is a tough one. Maybe Roger Moore, Sean Connery.
Well, it's a generational thing.
That's true.
So I'm going to say, I know everybody's going to say Sean Connery, but my generation, I'm going to say Roger Moore because I grew up with the trinkets and the toys and all that stuff.
They're called gadgets, Travis, not trinkets.
Bric-a-brac. I'm not as invested. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'm just laughing at you both.
I'm not as invested in the Bond stuff, so most of what I know is Trav's expertise on the matter. So I've been influenced to say Roger Moore as well.
Kevin Costner or Nicolas Cage? Oscar
Oh no!
Oh,
well, then you're talking about there's the vibe versus.
Yeah, that's I don't know.
Kevin Costner.
I'm not sure that's a fair comparison.
Well, yeah, Kevin Costner is clearly the man as far as he's like a creative force and makes huge epic movies that are usually great. But you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying.
I like me some Nicolas Cage.
I like me some Nicolas Cage.
Early, like Valley Girl.
Right?
Kidding. Yeah, you don't have to have range to be great.
The secret to being in a vehicle together, Judy, is with any relationship, you start figuring out what parts of the relationship work and what parts don't. And then over the years, you start avoiding the parts that don't and figuring out ways to work around them. And if you're driven enough to make it work, you will. Hence this band, which, we've made it work through insurmountable odds. But it's, that's the thing is, like Dale was saying earlier, just even deciding you're going to do this. It's like, do you want to do this or do you want to do that? And I don't want to do that. I did that. It's also remembering what that is. If you do something for too long, you start forgetting what the alternatives are. And I luckily grew up in a household where my dad was a 50-year carpenters union guy who also fished commercially. So anybody that knows work knows what that means. So do I want to do this or do I want to do that? How much money do I really care about? I need to survive, but I also need, you get one life and I have a soul that needs nourishing and all that kind of stuff. So until I can find two people crazy enough to nourish it with me other than these two, then they're the ones getting in the van.
That's right. Yep.
Up-tempo country, Jen, or more?
Sure. No, whatever. I'm just going to put a hat on the dinosaur.
Yeah, Dale has put in a drum set.
See this all?
Get a quick shot of Dale. We'll go to the wide shot. I want to thank everybody for coming. I want to thank you for some insightful and interesting questions, both to us and to you tonight. We're going to get back every Saturday until things is over and until we don't have anything more to say. And bless your hearts for supporting Travis Larson Band. I will mention in the description of this video there are links to support Travis Larson Band. Download music, t-shirts. There's a gift jar. Please keep supporting us. Like what you do, we love you for it. Appreciate it. And I don't know if anyone can hear me, but see you next week. Tune in Monday night when I hang out with Andy Timmons, Mike Neely, and Teddy Couple, and we talk all things music amongst us as guitar players. Thanks so much, you guys.